The lobby smelled like money and floor wax. Cold marble stretched from wall to wall, the kind of floor that made every footstep sound like a statement. Camille Reeves stood in the center of it. In her left hand, a letter. 3 paragraphs, official letterhead, the words "license suspension" printed in plain black ink like they were nothing, like they hadn't just cut the ground from under 11 years of her life. In her right hand, her phone, the screen still glowing, the video still on it. Across the lobby, Director Harlan Pruitt smiled at her. It was a wide smile, practiced, the kind that had probably worked on a lot of people in a lot of rooms. He stood flanked by 2 security guards and a man in a charcoal suit who hadn't introduced himself but held a leather briefcase like a shield. Pruitt spread his hands slightly, a gesture that was almost generous. "Ms. Reeves." His voice carried easily across the marble. "I think we both know how this ends." She didn't move, didn't speak, just looked at him with the particular stillness of someone who has already made a decision and is simply waiting for the world to catch up. He took 1 step forward. The charcoal suit man stayed put. "You have a suspended license," Pruitt said, the smile not shifting by a millimeter. "You have a video that will never see the inside of a courtroom. And you have—" He paused, tilting his head slightly. "Nowhere left to go." Camille looked down at the phone in her hand, then back up at him. "You're right," she said quietly. "About the courtroom." She slid the phone into her blazer pocket, picked up her bag from the floor. The scuffed right toe of her black flat caught the light for just a moment as she turned toward the exit. She didn't look back. The automatic doors slid open. Outside, the November air hit her face, cold and sharp and real. She walked to her 2009 Civic, got in, and sat for a moment with both hands on the cracked dashboard. Her chest was steady. Her hands were still. She had sent the video 40 minutes ago. But that's not what broke him. What broke him happened 6 weeks later. In a county office, a federal lobby, and a diner booth where an old woman slid a spiral notebook across a table and finally let go of it. Before we get back to this story, we want to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments below. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button now, because this story is only getting started. But to understand what Camille did next, what she had already done, we have to go back to a Wednesday morning that started like every other one. The radiator clanked at 5 a.m. It always did. Camille had stopped noticing it somewhere around year 3 of living in that apartment, the same way she'd stopped noticing the curtains she'd bought at a close-out sale. Pale blue, slightly too short for the windows, letting in a strip of streetlight all night long. She made coffee. Black. The fun is just beginning. Tell us what city you're from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. The tension is rising. Who's watching from where? Like and subscribe to the channel. More to come. Tell us in the comments who's from which country, and give us a like and subscribe. The plot thickens. Let's check our geography. Tell us where you are now, give the video a thumbs up, and subscribe. We're just warming up. Tell us where you're watching from. Give the video a like and hit the subscribe button. The climax is near. Share where you're from, like, and be sure to subscribe. Events are unfolding rapidly. Write your city in the chat, give it a like, and subscribe so you don't get lost. The juiciest part is yet to come. Let's get started. Get to know each other. Where are you from? Like and subscribe right now. The suspense is building. Tell us where you're watching this episode from, and reward us with a like and a subscribe. The excitement is running high. Tell us what city you're from now, give us a big like, and subscribe to the channel. Drank it standing over the sink because the kitchen table had disappeared under case files sometime in October and she hadn't found it since. The spider plant on the windowsill caught the first gray light. She'd owned it for 6 years and had no idea how it was still alive. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. __, quote _7 __. Her supervisor Linda had texted at 4:58 a.m. Camille typed back, "On it," then finished her coffee. She dressed in the dark, navy blazer, the one she'd worn to at least 200 hearings, over a white blouse. Black flats, sensible, with a small scuff on the right toe she kept meaning to polish. She picked up her bag, her keys, and the manila folder sitting on top of the pile nearest the door. Marcus Webb, 14 years old, detained 4 months ago for shoplifting $23 worth of food from a corner store. No prior record. Father, not listed. Mother, not listed. Emergency contact, Estelle Webb, grandmother, retired. Camille tucked the folder under her arm and went downstairs. The Civic smelled like old coffee and the ghost of a Pine air freshener that had stopped working 6 months ago. The passenger seat was stacked with folders. The dashboard had a crack running from the left vent to the right, a souvenir from a winter 2 years back when the cold had finally won. She'd taped over it with electrical tape. The tape was peeling now. She pulled onto the highway as the sky went from black to gray to the particular pale orange of a November morning that couldn't decide if it wanted to be cold or colder. Her phone rang through the car speakers. It was her colleague Jerome, already sounding tired. She thought about the last visit. The way Marcus had sat with his hands folded on the table, too still for a 14-year-old. The way he'd asked, very quietly, if his grandmother had called. "He's managing," she said. Jerome was quiet for a second. "Those private facilities, man, something always feels off. Something always is off. You want me to come? I've got it." She signaled, changed lanes. "Go handle the Alvarez docs before Linda sends another 5 a.m. text." Jerome laughed. "Too late." She smiled, small, tired, and ended the call. The Hartwell Juvenile Services building appeared on the right 20 minutes later. Low, beige, surrounded by a chain-link fence with a corporate logo on the gate. The parking lot was half empty. A security camera above the entrance tracked slowly, left to right, like something waiting. Camille grabbed Marcus's folder and got out of the car. The front desk guard didn't look up when Camille signed in. He slid the visitor log across the counter without a word, the laminate surface sticky under her fingers. The lobby smelled like industrial cleaner and something underneath it, something stale and closed off, like air that hadn't moved in a long time. A motivational poster on the wall read, "Every day is a new beginning." It hung slightly crooked. Nobody had straightened it. The guard who escorted her down the hallway walked 2 steps ahead, never once turning around. The walls were painted a yellow that had probably seemed cheerful in a catalog somewhere. Under the fluorescent lights, it looked like old mustard. The hallway was long, and the doors along it had no windows. They passed the cafeteria. Camille glanced through the narrow glass panel in the door out of habit. She saw the food line, plastic trays, boys in identical gray sweatshirts moving through in single file, eyes down. And then she saw Marcus. He was standing at the counter, slight, with close-cropped hair and the careful posture of someone who had learned to take up as little space as possible. He said something to the staff member behind the counter. His voice didn't carry through the glass. The staff member shook his head. Marcus said something again. Quiet, polite. What happened next took 4 seconds. The tray clattered to the floor. Marcus didn't pick it up. He stood very still, and then he wasn't standing anymore. 2 staff members had him by the arms, pulling him back from the counter, and his face was turned sideways, and his sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as he tried to find his footing. Camille's hand was already in her blazer pocket. She didn't make a sound. She pressed her back against the hallway wall, angled her phone toward the glass panel, and pressed record. 12 seconds. That was all she got before the escort guard turned around. "Ms. Reeves, visitation is the other direction." She lowered the phone. "Of course. Sorry." She followed him. Her heart was completely steady. The visitation room smelled like dry erase markers and old carpet. Marcus was brought in 10 minutes later. There was a red mark along his left forearm where a sleeve had been pushed up. He sat down across from her and folded his hands on the table. "Hey, Miss Camille." "Hey." She kept her voice even. "How are you eating?" He looked at the table. "They run out sometimes, in the morning. Do you tell anyone?" A pause. "I did today." She held his gaze. "I know." He looked up then, and something in his face shifted, just slightly, the way a door shifts when someone on the other side finally turns the handle. 20 minutes later, she was walking back through the lobby when a door opened and Director Harlan Pruitt stepped out. Mid-50s, silver hair, combed back with product, a suit that cost more than her monthly rent. He smelled faintly of expensive cologne and coffee with cream. He looked at her the way a person looks at a valet. "Ms. Reeves." The smile was already in place. "Could I have a word?" Pruitt's office smelled like leather and cologne, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having lost anything that mattered. The desk was large and almost completely clear, just a phone, a pen, and a framed photo turned slightly away from visitors. The chair behind it cost more than Camille's car. He gestured to the seat across from him. She didn't take it. A flicker behind his eyes. Then the smile reset. He settled into his own chair, unhurried, and folded his hands on the desk. Quote, 32. Quote, 33. Quote, 34, he said pleasantly. Quote, 35. Camille looked at him steadily. Quote, 36. Quote, 37. He picked up his pen, tapped it once against the desk. Quote, 38. Quote, 39. Quote, the pen stopped. Quote, 40. Quote, 41. Quote, she said again. Same tone, same volume. Pruitt leaned back slowly in his chair. The leather made a soft sound. He looked at her the way a person looks at a weather forecast they find inconvenient, mildly, without real concern. Quote, 42, quote, he said, quote, 43, quote. Her jaw tightened, just slightly. She said nothing. He picked up the desk phone and pressed a single button. 2 minutes later, a security guard appeared at the office door. Pruitt nodded toward Camille without looking at her. Quote 44. She walked out ahead of the guard, down the yellow hallway, past the crooked poster, through the lobby with its industrial cleaner smell, and out into the cold November air. She sat in her Civic, didn't start the engine. Her phone buzzed. She looked down at it. An email notification from the state bar. The subject line read, Notice of Conduct Review. License flag initiated. She read it twice. The words were careful and formal, and they meant one thing. She could not practice law until the review concluded. No hearings, no client visits, no Marcus. She set the phone on the cracked dashboard. Outside, the security camera above the facility entrance tracked slowly left, then right, then left again. She thought about Marcus's hands folded on the table, the red mark on his forearm, the way he'd said I did today, quietly, like he already knew what it would cost him. She thought about the 12 seconds of video still sitting on her phone. Then she picked up the phone, opened her contacts, and scrolled. Past colleagues, past clients' families, past numbers she hadn't called in years. She stopped on a name she hadn't dialed in 6 years. Dara Washington. Below the name, a title she'd never deleted. DOJ, Civil Rights Division. Camille stared at it for a long moment. Then she kept scrolling, past Dara's name, all the way to another one. Estelle Webb. She pressed call. Estelle Webb's house was a small brick place on a quiet street, the kind of street where people still raked their own leaves. Geraniums sat in the window boxes, red, somehow still holding on in November, stubborn as the woman who watered them. Camille knocked twice. The door opened, and Estelle stood there in a cardigan and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, the kind of woman who had spent 30 years making 12-year-olds believe they could do hard things. "Ms. Reeves." Her voice was careful. "Come in." The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and dish soap. A hanging light over the table cast a warm circle on the surface below, and in the center of that circle sat a spiral notebook, its cover soft and bent from months of handling. Estelle sat down across from it. She didn't open it yet. Quote, 47, quote, she asked. Quote, 48, quote, Camille said. Quote, 49, quote, Estelle's hands, resting on the table, went very still. "I've been writing it down," she said finally. "Everything he tells me on Saturdays. Every time something's wrong. I didn't know who to take it to." She paused. A mother complained last spring. Her son was transferred to a facility in another state within 2 weeks. Camille looked at the notebook. "How long?" 8 months. 8 months of Saturday visits. 8 months of a 67-year-old woman sitting at this table under this light, writing down what her grandson told her in careful schoolteacher handwriting because she didn't know what else to do with it. Underscore, underscore. Quote, underscore, 55, underscore, underscore, Estelle slid it across the table. Camille opened to the first entry. The date was 8 months ago. The handwriting was precise and steady, each letter formed completely, the way someone writes when they know the words might matter later. She read 3 entries. Then she closed it, Camille said. Estelle looked at her over the reading glasses she'd pushed back down. "I've been trusting myself for 8 months, and it hasn't gotten Marcus home." A beat. "Make your call." Camille stepped into the hallway and dialed. It rang twice. "Dara, Washington." "It's Camille Reeves." A pause, the kind that means recognition, not confusion. "Camille, it's been a while." "I know. I have a video and a witness and 8 months of documented entries from a grandmother who's been sitting on this alone because she was afraid of retaliation." She kept her voice level. "The facility is privately operated, state contract. The director has political connections." Silence on the line. Not empty silence. The kind where someone is already thinking, "Send me the video." "Already sent." Another pause. "How detailed is the notebook?" "Dates, names, descriptions. 32 entries. Her handwriting is perfect." Dara's voice shifted, just slightly, the way a door shifts when the latch finally releases. Quote, 69, quote, 70, quote, 71. Camille looked back toward the kitchen. Estelle was sitting at the table with both hands wrapped around a coffee mug, looking at the space where the notebook had been. Camille said. 3 days later, Camille noticed the car. Silver sedan, parked across from her office building on Tuesday morning, gone by noon. Back on Wednesday, different license plates, same dent above the rear left wheel. She stood at her office window with a cold cup of coffee and looked at it for a long time without moving. Her phone rang. "Jerome." Quote, 74. Quote, he asked. Quote, 75. Quote, it came through 30 seconds later. A press release from Hartwell Juvenile Services, Inc., 2 paragraphs, smooth and corporate. It described Camille's visit as having involved a violation of facility recording policy and noted that the matter had been referred to the appropriate professional oversight bodies. No names. Just enough. She set the phone face down on her desk. The fluorescent light above her flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. She'd been meaning to report it for 6 months. That same afternoon, Estelle called. Quote, 78. Her voice was controlled in the way that people control their voices when they are frightened and don't want to show it. From Hartwell's legal team, it says my visitation privileges are under review pending an investigation into visitor conduct. Camille's hand tightened around the phone. A pause. Estelle's voice dropped. He waits for Saturdays, Miss Reeves. That's the only... She stopped, collected herself. He counts the days. Camille closed her eyes for 1 second, opened them. Estelle, has Dara's office been in touch? A woman called yesterday, asked me questions for 40 minutes, very thorough. Good, that's good. Is it enough? Camille looked out the window. The silver sedan was still there. It's going to be. She wasn't certain, but she said it like she was. That evening she sat at her desk under the flickering light, eating cold pad thai from a container, reading through everything she'd compiled. The video, Estelle's notebook entries that Dara's office had photographed, the press release, the conduct review letter, the timeline she'd built on a legal pad going back 8 months. She read it all the way through twice. Then she found something she hadn't noticed before. In Estelle's third notebook entry, dated 7 months ago, a name. A staff member Marcus had mentioned by name, and that same name appeared in a state inspection report from 4 years earlier. A different facility, a similar complaint, closed without action. She stared at it. Same name, different facility. 4 years ago. She picked up her phone and called Dara. Quote 94. Quote she said when Dara picked up. Quote 95, quote 96, quote. She read it out. Quote 97, quote. She heard Dara typing. A pause. Quote 98, quote. Dara's voice was different now, quieter, more deliberate. This isn't just Hartwell. The cold pad thai sat untouched. The light flickered again overhead. No, Camille said. I don't think it ever was. Meanwhile, across town, Harlan Pruitt sat in a boardroom that smelled like new carpet and recycled air. 3 corporate attorneys arranged around the table like a wall. Coffee going cold in front of him, untouched. She has nothing actionable, the lead attorney said. His name was Garrett. He had the kind of face that had never carried doubt. The license flag holds. Without it, she can't file, can't visit, can't make noise in any venue that matters. Pruitt straightened his cufflinks. And the notebook? Hearsay from a grandmother, nothing documented by a licensed professional. Garrett clicked his pen. Let her sit on it. Pruitt nodded slowly. He looked satisfied. He looked like a man who had played this game before and knew which moves came next. He didn't know about Dara Washington. 3 miles away, Camille sat in Estelle's kitchen for the 2nd time that week. The notebook was open between them, but neither of them was looking at it. Estelle had made tea, chamomile in mismatched mugs, and the smell of it was warm and domestic against the cold coming through the window frames. They moved him, Estelle said. Camille looked up. When? Yesterday. New housing unit. No explanation. Estelle wrapped both hands around her mug. He's allowed 1 call a week. He used it to tell me he was okay. A pause. He said it twice, like he was trying to convince one of us. Camille felt something tighten in her chest. Estelle, Dara's team is moving. I need you to be patient for just a little longer. I've been patient for 8 months. The words weren't sharp. They were just true. Underscore, quote underscore 114, underscore, quote, underscore 115, underscore underscore. Estelle looked at her steadily. Quote 116. She set her mug down. Quote 117. Her voice caught just once, then held. Quote 118. The kitchen was very quiet. Quote was this 19? So Camille asked. Hartoro quote 120. Estelle's jaw was set. I told him someone was listening. I didn't know if it was true yet, but I told him yes. Camille looked at the notebook. 32 entries. 8 months of a woman refusing to stop writing, even when she had no idea if anyone would ever read it. It was true, Camille said. Her phone buzzed on the table. Dara. She picked up. We have a court date, Dara said. Sealed motion filed this morning. And Camille, the state contract. We pulled the original bid documents. A pause, precise and deliberate. Pruitt's company was the only bidder. The evaluation committee had 2 members with direct financial ties to the parent corporation. Camille was still. The contract was never competitive, Dara continued. It was arranged. Everything Pruitt had built, the smooth lobby, the corporate attorneys, the practiced smile, had been built on a foundation that someone had quietly, carefully, been photographing from underneath for 8 months. Camille looked across the table at Estelle. Get some sleep tonight, she said. Tomorrow things start moving. The night before the reinstatement hearing, Camille sat at her kitchen table at 11 p.m. with the suspension letter in front of her and a cup of tea she'd forgotten to drink. The radiator clanked in its usual rhythm. The spider plant on the windowsill threw a faint shadow against the wall. She'd read the letter so many times the fold lines were soft. Her phone lit up. Jerome. You ready for tomorrow? Getting there. You need me there? She looked at the letter. 11 years, 200 hearings in that navy blazer, 31 names on a whiteboard, some with stars next to them. I've got it, she said. Camille. His voice was quieter now. What Pruitt did, flagging your license over a recording you had every right to make, that's not a gray area. They know that. I know they know. So why do you sound like you're preparing for a loss? She didn't answer right away. Outside, a car passed slowly on the wet street, its headlights sweeping across her ceiling. Quote, 138, quote, she said finally. Quote, 139. Quote, Jerome was quiet for a moment. Quote, 140? Quote, 141? Quote, 142. Quote, she said good night and set the phone down. She opened her laptop, pulled up the Hartwell corporate filings Dara's team had shared, pages of financial documents, contract records, board member names. She'd read them 3 times already. She read them again. The pattern was clear and ugly and had been sitting in public records for years, waiting for someone to look. At 1 a.m., she closed the laptop. She went to her closet and took out the navy blazer, hung it on the back of the door where she'd see it in the morning. The scuff on her right flat caught the light, still there, still unpolished. She looked at it for a moment, then left it. She thought about Marcus asking his grandmother if anyone on the outside knew. She thought about Estelle writing in her notebook alone at that kitchen table, month after month, not knowing if it would ever matter. She thought about Pruitt's smile, wide, practiced, certain. She turned off the light and lay down, but sleep didn't come for a long time. She stared at the ceiling and listened to the radiator and thought about what it costs to do nothing and whether that cost is ever lower than it seems. At 6 a.m., her alarm went off. She got up, made coffee, ate peanut butter toast standing over the sink. She put on the blazer, picked up her bag, picked up the suspension letter, folded, soft at the creases, and put it in her pocket. Her phone showed one new message from Dara, sent at 5:47 a.m. We move at 7:40. You just focus on your hearing. Camille looked at the whiteboard through her open office door. 31 names, Marcus's near the top, a star beside it. She walked out and pulled the door shut behind her. The street was cold and still, and the sky was just beginning to go gray at the edges. She got in the Civic and drove. At 7:40 a.m., 3 black SUVs and 2 white government vans turned into the Hartwell parking lot. They moved without sirens, without speed. The kind of arrival that doesn't need to announce itself. Federal investigators in dark jackets stepped out with clipboards and hard drives and the particular calm of people who have done this before. The security camera above the entrance tracked left, then right, then left again. And then a technician in a dark jacket reached up and covered the lens with a piece of black tape. Inside, Pruitt was in his office. Jacket on, coffee with cream steaming on his desk, the morning feeling like every other morning. His assistant knocked. Her voice was different. "Mr. Pruitt, there are people in the lobby." He came out of his office and walked down the hallway, past the yellow walls, past the crooked motivational poster that still hadn't been straightened, and into the lobby. Dara Washington stood in the center of the marble floor. 49 years old, a dark blazer, a federal warrant held at her side like she'd been carrying documents like that her whole career. Because she had. Pruitt looked at her, then at the investigators moving through the building behind her, quiet and systematic. The smile came, wide, practiced. "I think there's been some confusion," he said. "I'd like to call my attorney." Dara held out the warrant. "Of course, this is for you." He took it, scanned it. His jaw shifted slightly. "I also have friends at the governor's." His office was briefed at 6 a.m. Dara's voice was even, unhurried. Quote, 149. Pruitt stood very still. The cologne that had filled every room he'd walked into for 20 years suddenly seemed like too much. His hand, holding the warrant, lowered slowly to his side. He sat down in a lobby chair. The leather was cold. Across town, Camille's phone rang as she sat in her car outside the state bar office. The hearing was in 11 minutes. She looked at the screen. "Dara," she picked up. Quote, 150, quote, Dara said. Quote, 151, quote. Camille pressed her back against the car seat. Through the windshield, the state bar entrance looked ordinary. Glass doors, a small brass sign, a potted plant nobody had watered enough. Quote, 152, quote, she asked. Quote, 153. Quote, Camille closed her eyes. One breath. 2. Quote, 154, Dara said. Quote, 155. She put the phone in her pocket and got out of the car. The cold air hit her face. Her right flat, still scuffed, still unpolished, clicked against the pavement as she walked toward the entrance. Inside, the hearing room smelled like old wood and coffee from a machine in the corner. 3 board members sat at a long table. The suspension letter, the one she'd folded and refolded until the creases were soft, sat in the center. The lead board member looked up. "Ms. Reeves, please sit down." She sat. She folded her hands on the table. She thought about Marcus's hands folded the same way in the visitation room. Careful, patient, waiting. She was done waiting. Underscore, underscore, quote underscore 157 underscore underscore, she said. Estelle signed the release paperwork at a small table in a county office that smelled like printer toner and old carpet. The fluorescent light above her hummed steadily. Her pen moved across each line in the same careful handwriting she'd used in the notebook. Deliberate, complete. A door opened at the end of the hallway. Marcus walked through it, wearing a blue hoodie and jeans, and the new sneakers Estelle had bought with money she'd been setting aside since October. He was taller than she remembered. 4 months had done that. He stopped when he saw her. She stood up. He crossed the room in 4 steps, and she put both arms around him and held on. And he let her, standing very still the way he always had when he didn't know what else to do with something that was too large for words. They stood like that for a long moment in the humming light. Then he pulled back and looked at her. "Grandma, can we get pancakes?" She laughed. The real kind, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and doesn't ask permission. And picked up her purse. Underscore, quote underscore 159, underscore, she said. 6 months later, the Hartwell building sat empty. The corporate logo on the chain-link gate had been removed, leaving a rectangular shadow on the metal where it used to be. A federal civil rights investigation was open and moving. Harlan Pruitt had resigned his position before he could be removed, but the resignation had not stopped what was coming. His name appeared in a DOJ press release on a Tuesday morning, plain and factual and permanent. Camille's license was fully reinstated the same day Dara's team walked out of Hartwell with 3 hard drives and a box of documents. The State Bar's letter used careful legal language, but what it meant was simple. The flag had been improper. The interference had been external. Someone had tried to dismantle 11 years of work with a phone call and a signature, and it hadn't held. She folded the letter and put it in her blazer pocket. Then she went back to her office and picked up the dry erase marker. The whiteboard was still full of names. She got to work. On a Saturday morning 6 months after Marcus came home, Camille and Estelle met at a diner 2 blocks from Estelle's house. Vinyl booths, thick ceramic mugs, the smell of bacon grease and warm bread that clung to everything. The kind of place that had been there for 30 years and intended to stay. Estelle slid the spiral notebook across the table. "I don't need this anymore," she said. Camille looked at it. The cover soft and worn, the spiral slightly bent. 8 months of Saturdays. 8 months of careful, frightened, determined handwriting by a woman who had no power except her own persistence and used every bit of it. "Can I keep it?" Camille asked quietly. "I want to remember what it looks like when someone refuses to stop." Estelle wrapped both hands around her coffee mug and smiled. Outside the diner window, the street was ordinary and bright. Camille looked at it for a moment. "Marcus gets to go home," she said, almost to herself. "That's enough. That's everything." If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe, because every week we bring you stories about ordinary people who refuse to be erased. And tell us in the comments, if you had that video on your phone and knew what it might cost you, would you have pressed send?